You know when you sort of, you know when you sort of walk, you know when you ever accidentally stepped on a bug, like you didn't actually mean to kill it, but you don't feel bad, you know? I feel kind of that way sometimes when I snub some fans.
You know what is amazing? This wasn't hidden away, no one could see it. Where would you find it? Indiana Jones. It was people wouldn't show this. That is an atrocious thing to say. We always say things, maybe we've had a drink or two or whatever. We wish he wouldn't have said that. He's explained to camera how he feels about people who paid money to make his life better, to celebrate him, to admire him, and that's how he reacts. You know what's happened with Jian Ghomeshi, the allegations. Well, I want to talk more specifically, not exclusively, about social media. A lot of people talk about social media this and that. It's not the answer to everything. It doesn't change the world that much. But in this case, I don't think we would have known about Ghomeshi without it. The man, Jesse Brown, who broke a lot of this, before he revealed what he knew, he had about 9,000 followers. I think he's got now about almost 30,000 followers. Gina Phillips has many more followers than that, metaphorically and literally. And it is, I don't think I'm overstating this, without social media, the Toronto Star were nervous of saying too much.
Yes.
It was social media really that enabled all this.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Social media is sort of it's a scary place,
yeah.
But it's also a place where you can put out messages and be heard, yeah. By strangers that don't already, people that don't already know you. People are willing to tell Twitter things that they would never tell sometimes their own friends directly, or even their, the police, for instance. So it's interesting how powerful it can be in spreading conversation. And in this case, everything with Ghomeshi, it's really brought up the conversation of why didn't these women speak out? I mean, you hear people asking this all the time. It's easy in my brain. I don't know why. I think it's because I grew up, my mom works in a nonprofit, and not that it takes that, but I grew up with an awareness that people react differently in different situations. Sometimes their upbringing, their fear of talking about what struggles that they have stops them from getting those people behind bars and actually recognizing themselves as victims. And in this case, it was Sue Montgomery from the Montreal Gazette. She's worked there for decades. She's been a journalist for decades, I should say. And Antonia Zerbasias, she's a former Toronto Star reporter.
Oh, I thought she was still there.
No, apparently.
Antonia Zerbasias, yeah, not a fan or friend of mine, I have to say, but.
Well, yeah. I mean, in this case, they got together and decided to create the Being Raped Never Reported hashtag. Essentially, they were sick and tired of the criticism and the backlash towards these women and decided that they would tell their own stories and see where it went. So they have both admitted to being sexually assaulted at least twice by people that they trusted. For Sue Montgomery, it was her grandfather. And then it was someone that she worked with. For Antonia, it was 3 men in a basement, just a gathering, and later by a man that she trusted as well. So they had these stories to share. They didn't want to make it about them. And
really?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
forgive the cynicism. But it
perhaps
has really become about them.
But it's irrelevant, really, in the big scheme of things. And that's because this is spread around the world, and victims everywhere have spoken out, and they never before have.
Okay, but look, I don't want to talk about these individuals. I used to know Antonia a little bit. I don't know who the woman is, forgive me. But the reason that the women in this case didn't come forward is because some of them were involved in media.
Yes.
And they were terrified that they would be belittled by his many friends, who included quite a few of the people who are now attacking him. Jian Ghomeshi could do no wrong for these people.
Definitely.
They may well have gone after the women. They thought their careers in media would be over. Now, that might sound rather flippant to us, but I can understand to a certain degree. They mixed in circles that were probably fairly liberal and very CBC friendly. They didn't know, they were in shock. They didn't know what to do. I don't think that describes the experience of every woman.
No, I don't think so. There are certainly enablers in everyone's life that kind of make that kind of behavior okay. As a society, I think it's a social crisis more than anything that these women feel that they can't speak out or even recognize it as abuse. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
If I went for a drink with someone, It's a feeling of that's on me if something ends up happening, even if it's wrong.
Is it? I mean, there's one thing.
It depends.
If a guy makes a clumsy pass at you and you say no,
right.
You've misread the signs. Okay, that's it.
Absolutely.
But the allegations are he was punching women repeatedly in the head.
Yes. My confidence is, I think I would recognize that as
Of course you would.
An awful act that should I should go to the police.
Yeah.
Not every woman, number one, has that confidence that I am lucky to have, but also it's the either he is such a powerhouse in the industry, as you mentioned. Maybe they felt that they were partly responsible. Maybe they felt like
that's possible.
It's embarrassing. You know, some of these women did sexual acts to him, and they've since, because of this, had to admit that. And then it's hard to go, well, and then he punched me after I did all this. So you feel like you've been part of it. And I think that's a really sad thing. But I think because we haven't really defined necessarily in regular social conversations what is abuse and what is just pressure, what is...
It's a good point. There are grey areas, and there are women who've alleged things that haven't been completely true. But at the same time, generally the history and the power dynamic of male and female over the years, that women have been the victims. And trying to put that right, I mean, I really can empathize with the women in these cases. And you mentioned that some of them performed sexual acts on him. And then I'm sure they thought, well, if I now say it, people will say, well, you did that. You must have wanted this. And,
I know.
And you feel degraded. And no, I think they were in a terrible... And they had the young woman who wrote about a very unpleasant date, not violence, but just very unpleasant. I think most of us knew who she was writing about. It was Ghomeshi.
Yes.
And she was then attacked by all sorts of people. Many of them, again, very lefty fans of Mr. Ghomeshi. So that was her experience. They were terrified it would be replicated if they came forward.
Yes, oh, definitely. And there's strength in numbers. The more people that come out, the more people feel like they can come
out. Of course, yeah.
And I think that's why social media is powerful, especially with a hashtag like this, because you see thousands of women coming out and you go, well, I'm going to talk about my experience too.
Yeah,
Some of them didn't feel like online was the right place, but they tweeted, I told my husband tonight, or I told my family. I don't feel comfortable sharing my story with strangers, but I'm telling the people that should know. That's unbelievable to me. And we don't know if these women are sane or, you know, we don't know if they are just lying. People on social media are crazy, but we have to believe that most of these women are feeling inspired to speak out, and we need to just believe them.
But I don't know if we have to, but I think we should.
I think we should.
And social media, the great thing about social media is also the terrible thing about social media.
Yes.
Anyone can be part of it.
Yep.
The sewers breathe. Some of the people there, I mean, they are so full of hate and anger and self-loathing. But also, greatness can be achieved. Revolutionary movements can correspond with one another. And in this case, if a handful of women feel that their lives can be saved or salvaged by this, then it has been successful. In terms of Ghomeshi himself, it's almost every day now. It's almost every day. And in a way, I want to not cover it at all because it's so ridiculous. But we have to, and we need to, because it is important, for, I suppose, for this country. It's much deeper than just him. It's a culture, I believe, that turned a blind eye at least to some of his activities.
Yeah, and I think when you hear rumors about someone, a lot of people say, I knew about him, I heard about him. It's hard because if you hear a rumor about someone, you don't suddenly go, well, it is my responsibility to now take that as truth and go to the police, right? But there are steps in an organization such as the CBC or that you can discuss that, and it's a safe space, and at least the authorities or the people in charge are made aware, and that's the best that we can do. I think there's some enabling, but I don't think that we all have allowed this abuse to happen.
No, I don't, and I don't think people generally at the CBC allowed it to happen.
No.
I think some people who knew him, again, they're allegations, but if they're true, they knew perhaps not the extent of, but that something wasn't quite right. And that harassment maybe was occurring, attitudes that were... We've heard that he sat down at a... This is not about violence, but sat down at a meeting and said, if this show is not the most important thing in your effing life, then get out of here. Well, I said to my producers, my show is not even the most important thing in my life. And if I said that to you, you'd just throw things at me. I mean, you'd think it was a joke.
I would.
this was allowed, that this pomposity,
Yes.
this vainglory. If you feel like that in one part of your life, the chances are you may act in other ways of your life in a not dissimilar manner.
Good point.
That was very good. Thank you very much indeed.
All right, thank you, Michael.